Hey guys, we'll get started in just a minute. Just gotta kick things off here for both streams. Don't want anybody to miss. Alright, looks like we are live. Hey, good afternoon to you guys. How's everybody doing? Had a lot of fun last night. Kyle was back. If you missed last night's stream, Kyle was able to make it back. And we had a final time talking about things. We took questions and input from you guys, which is lots of fun. Hey, Ricky. Hey, Adam. Hello. I don't speak Greek. I don't know what the English translation of your name is. I am just mortified. I'm sorry about that. But thanks for being here. Hello. Adam says, howdy. Oh man, I love that Otis cover art. Me too. It's one of my favorite pieces, honestly. Of all the things we got posters of and so on and etc. in the Art and Arcana Dungeons and Dragons Art and Arcana box set book thing, I wish they had given us a poster of the deities and demi-gods cover. But we did not. So we did not get that. But anyway, yes, we had a lot of fun. Hello, Semele. Good to see you. Yes, we had a lot of fun last night. We talked to and with and about my co-host Kyle. It was good to see him back. It's good to see you guys back too. Always. So anyway, how's everyone's Thursday going? I am doing okay. I am thinking that this weekend I am going to be doing some cleaning up here around the studio because I want to set out some Dwarven Forge and some minis and some so on and etc. for the Monday game. Unfortunately, this means like taking down the painting stuff that I had put up, but I hadn't been painting much with it anyway, so I'll set it aside just for the time being and set up some Dwarven Forge. I will probably shoot a lot of B-roll as I do that, and I may put together a short video. I'll go back to doing shorts. Not short like the less than 60 seconds that YouTube wants for YouTube shorts, although I may do one of those. But what I may do. Ricky has night class. Well, stop by later when you have no class. No, what I may do is just put together a B-roll, and I've got some great music to go behind that, courtesy of Bards of Greyhawk. Maybe like a time lapse of me putting up some dungeon pieces or something like that. If you guys would like to see that, let me know, and I'll be more than happy to share that with y'all. Well, I mean, that's the whole point in filming it, really, isn't it? To have something to share with you guys. But anyway, speaking of painting, this is specifically for Bo Ganora, Cabelair. He had mentioned something. I had said, okay, let me back up to the beginning of the conversation. There is a guy who works or worked for Games Workshop as like their chief number one painting guy, and he is where the two thin coats meme comes from, if you know what I mean. And it's good advice, by the way. You want 2 or more thin coats of paint on a mini. That is the absolute truth. You don't want to glop on paint. Like, I've got minis where I literally, I was putting paint on the mini right out of the bottle. Wasn't thinning it, wasn't doing anything like that. Just glop, 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 glop. That have later gotten chipped, and you can see, and I don't mean scratched, I mean chipped. There's like a chunk missing with depth to it. So yeah, thinning your paints is a must. But this guy kind of started a meme, too thin coats. But he has founded his own paint company and has a range of paints. And Boganora's got a YouTube channel, Imperial Ramblings, which, if you care about tabletop gaming, 40K, stuff like that, let me find that real quick. Go check his channel out. It's good stuff. It's definitely good stuff. But over there, he had made a comment about this guy's paint range that he was releasing, which, one would suspect is a bit of a big deal for those who paint. And I said I might try some. Maybe get an excuse to do another paintings basics video. And he said, yes, I would love to see that, especially for those of us with no talent. Now, those of you that have been following this channel for a long time, or the rare number of you who've seen my minis up close, know that I'm no super talent when it comes to painting. I'm just not. That's not me fishing for compliments. My hand skill, my skill with the brush is not what it could be. And I get in a hurry, and I leave certain details undone or don't go back and clean up. It's just the way it is. But the painting technique itself is sound. So, for Bo's sake, before we jump into today's live stream proper, and I'll demonstrate this again one day. I will do painting demo stuff again one day. I may just, and sooner than you think. I don't mean one day, like at some point in the far future. No, my painting method is very simple. To paint a color on a mini, any given color, flesh tone, it even works for metallics. I'm not a non-metallics metal guy. I'm just not. It looks really good in static two-dimensional photos. In 3D, it looks like crap. That's just, gold with, or brown with a line of white, and then with lighter brown above it. Looks like bronze or copper or even an aged gold in a photo. On the tabletop, it looks like brown and a stripe of white and a blob of lighter brown. Anyway, so this method even works for metallics. So again, for those in the back, use a color triad. 3 shades of color: a dark base, a medium, and a light highlight. And then an ink or a wash that is the same general color that you're working on. Paint with the base color. Hit it with the ink after it's dried. Do heavy highlights with the medium color and lighter highlights with the third color. You can call it done then, but if you want to add a 50-50 mix of white to your topmost color, you can do a highlight and then add more white and then add more white and just build layer upon layer upon layer upon layer, lighter and lighter and lighter and lighter. I just go with the 3. I just go base, ink shade, middle, top, done. And you can even dry brush white mixed with your lightest highlight to get even better highlights. I do that a lot. Dry brush covers up a multitude of sins when it comes to miniature painting. Sorry. Very thirsty today. So that's the answer to your question, Bo. I will demonstrate that again someday. Ricky says, I'd love more dungeon stuff and dungeon walkthroughs. Well, we will do more stuff like that. So anyway, that's my little painting rant for the day. And we'll talk about all that stuff again soon. But to move on. Looking. Oh, thank you, Acrobat. There's it moving now. There we go. Okay, it wasn't moving. So the question comes often in D&D games, any D&D game, regardless of edition. What do you do in a fantasy setting where gods are real and they can potentially intervene? Do you ignore it? Do you just not ever have it happen? I think from a dungeon mastering perspective, you're denying yourself as a DM a lot of fun to just say, oh, none of that stuff matters and never have that happen. You know, divine intervention shouldn't ever be a thing. That's one of the reasons why, I never cottoned that much to basic D&D. I'll play original D&D. I appreciate the basic D&Ds for what they did. But the fact that there's no demons, devils, or gods, or what have you in the basic versions of D&D, I thought was always a shortcoming of those systems. Now, that's not to say that you should just have, deities and demi-gods and heroes of that level just walking through your game constantly. It will belittle the characters and make them feel like second-rate players compared to this important narrative that you, the dungeon master, have created for them to exist in. And you don't want that. You do not want that at all. So let's take a look then at introducing gods, and not just introducing gods, but dealing with players who are starting to get vast cosmic powers. So flip over to page 111 in the Dungeon Master's Guide, and we start off interventions by deities. And Gary once again brings home a salient point in the first paragraph. If the supernatural powers of the various outer planes could and would continually and constantly involve themselves in the affairs of the millions upon the prime material plane, they would not only be so busy as to get neither rest nor relaxation, but those deities would be virtually handling their own affairs and confronting each other regularly and often. If an entreaty for aid is heard one time in 100, surely each and every deity in the multiverse would be as busy as a switchboard operator during some natural disaster. Even giving a deity a nominal number of servants able to supply aid to desperate adventurers, the situation would be frenzied at best. Add to this the effects of various spells: commune, contact, other plane, gate. It's obvious that the intervention by a deity is no trifling matter and is not to be allowed on a whim, even if characters are in extremis. And again, Gary's speaking over something here, but I feel like this should be emphasized and reiterated. If you are constantly allowing gods to walk into your game and do godly things, your players wind up second banana to whatever it is you're playing out. Now, of course, the second paragraph here. This is not to dictate that deities will never come to characters. Serving some deity is an integral part of AD&D. The mighty gods, demons, and devils are prone to appear when their name is spoken, provided they stand the possibility of gaining converts to their cause. The forces of good might send some powerful creature of like alignment and aid to characters on a mission in their behalf. That's something important to remember. Somebody's praying to Pelor. Pelor himself doesn't have to, and indeed won't, show up. He might send a diva, a planetar, a solar, Kyrin, Gold Dragon, Coatl, something other than himself to show up and aid the characters. It doesn't have to just be the deity, and it shouldn't just be the deity. Otherwise, the accumulation of hit points and ever greater abilities and better saving throws of characters represents the aid supplied by supernatural forces. Why isn't my god helping me? Hey, you're better than 99% of the hoi polloi who would never conceive of going into a dungeon to try and collect up gold, and you can do nearly divine things themselves. So you've kind of already got the favor of the gods, is basically what Gary's saying. In most cases, therefore, you will have to determine the involvement of deities as you develop the scenario or series of scenarios for your campaign. In my own Greyhawk campaign, there have been 9 demigods, 3 demon lords, and a handful of Norse and other gods involved in the course of many years of play. Once or twice there has been divine intervention, and twice the powers of the infernal region have come at the mention of a certain name. Spur-of-the-moment intervention can be handled as follows. If the character beseeching help has been exemplary in faithfulness. Now, most players, unless they're clerics or paladins, don't fall into this category. Because most players play their characters as, I don't like this term, but it's true in this case, murder hobos. Even the lawful good ones. They're not out there serving their god. They're out there serving their own best interests. Now, they might be doing it under veneer of lawful good or chaotic good or neutral good or lawful evil, chaotic evil or neutral evil or true neutral. But they aren't out there serving their deity, with a sheaf of tracts in their belt pouch and a big holy symbol around their neck, saying, yeah, we're going to kill all the orcs, but we're going to kill all the orcs in the name of Pelor, and then we're going to go back to the town, and I'm going to tell them that, it's not just by my sword, but it's by Pelor's blessing that we were able to do this. I'm not picking on Pelor because there's anything special about him in the rules. It's just literally the first one that sprang to mind. So a player's got to have been exemplary in their devotion to their deity before you should even consider a die roll work. Now, if they're like, I want to pray to my god, I'm going to see if my god's going to intervene. Can I roll the dice to see if that happens? Sure. Oh, I rolled a 16. Is that enough? Nope. Or, I rolled a 20. Is that enough? Nope. So if the character beseeching has been exemplary in faithfulness, then allow a straight 10% chance that some creature, not the deity themselves, some creature like the ones I just mentioned. And if it's an evil god, maybe he sends one of the minor beasts of hell. If it's a good god, maybe it sends one of the creatures I mentioned before, Chiron, Coatl, some kind of good spirit to aid them. If this is the first time the character has asked for help, if double nuts is rolled, there's a percentage chance equal to the character's level of experience that the deity itself will come, and this chance is modified as follows. So it's a straight 10% chance if it's the first time. But then on the other end, if they get 00, check the chart. Each previous intervention in behalf of the character is minus 5%. Alignment behavior only medial. You have followed the letter, if not the spirit, or the spirit, if not the letter, of alignment. Alignment behavior borderline, minus 10%. Direct confrontation with another deity required by the situation, minus 10%. Character opposing forces of diametrically opposed alignment. The lawful good I got this right in rehearsal, guys, I promise. The lawful good paladin versus the chaotic evil demon. Character serving deity proximately through direct instructions or by means of some intermediary. And deities will not intervene on the planes which are the habitation of other deities, i.e. the outer planes. They will neither venture to involve themselves in the positive and negative material planes. Intervention in the elemental planes is subject to DM option based upon the population he or she has placed there. If there are elemental gods, deities from the outer planes will not go there. Intervention occurs only on the prime material, astral, and ethereal planes in most cases. Demigods and gods. If a demigod or god is deprived of its material body by any means whatsoever, including being killed on the prime material plane, then it is sent back to its own particular plane. This process is similar to that of slaying the material form of some demon or devil. So basically what Gary's saying here is god intervention is rare. Direct god intervention is diminishingly rare. Stupidly small chance of that happening. So let's say your alignment behavior has been borderline, but your character is opposing forces of diametrically opposed alignment, and they pray for divine intervention. A straight 10% chance, minus 10%, plus 1%. And note, it says, if this is the first time the character has asked for help. So you might want to modify it accordingly. Look, you had your one, I saved your bacon the one time, now you got to pull yourself out of the fire. You know, back when you were a second level character and you prayed for intervention, now you're a fourth level character and you're praying for it again, you should have learned your lesson. Maybe your lesson learning becomes you were slain and then raised up and earned your 1000 XP death bonus right there. So divine intervention is a dicey thing at best. And you should definitely wield it with care. Wield it with care. But that's really only half the story. And let me see here. Where's the... The question then comes up like, okay, all right, so you're saying characters save thyself. What if the characters do save themselves? What if they do get up to the level where they don't need gods? They might be gods themselves. I'll answer a couple of questions here real quick. Chris says, the cataclysmic gods wreck the world employed by TSR when 2nd edition was rolled out put me off having deities get directly involved. I can definitely see it. Now that I'm older, I think I have a better feel for what appropriate director intervention should be. Good for you. Definitely don't sling it around. Don't pass it around like bennies, like +1 daggers, that sort of thing. Unless a +1 dagger is incredibly rare in your campaign. I've run into, quite frankly, kind of tedious campaigns where it's like, oh, no, a +1 sword is a super rare item in my campaign, you know. Players, like, you know, orcs are legendary creatures that no one ever sees, and a person might aspire to earn 50 gold pieces ever in their life. I'm like, look, come on. You're not even playing D&D at that point. Warhammer Fantasy roleplay or Harn Master or something like that is much more your speed. Not that I would ever want to drive someone off from playing D&D, but you get what I'm saying. But the question comes, you know, you just finished playing Q1, Queen of the Demon Web Pits. Everybody in the group is double-digit levels. High double-digit levels, let's say. Well, not high, like everybody's 99th level. You know, 13th, 14th, 15th level or more. I have the threat of an evil god showing up every so often, as it should be, Ricky, as it absolutely should be. But the question then comes up, and even if the characters aren't that high a level, occasionally you're going to get stats for characters that become, well, godlike. So let's take a look at some of those, at the consequences of it. Now, I'm introducing a new text here. If you don't have this, it's available as a PDF. Now, thanks to someone who had a copy of Deities and Demigods that was in poor shape already, they were able to create the expurgated pages, and we sort of kit bashed together a unexpurgated Deities and Demigods. So if I happen to scroll through this ever in reference and you're like, where did Bill get a PDF of Deities and Demigods, the unexpurgated version, that it looks that good? That's where I got it from. It's not for sale. If you want one, you'd have to go out and find it yourself. Just saying. I've heard rumors that it exists somewhere on the internet, but I don't know for sure. And I'm not going to speculate, and I'm not going to share links. So Deities and Demigods actually has rules for stats that exceed the norm. If you note in the player's handbook, let's see. Elves can potentially have an intelligence of 19. Now, it's very sketchy in the player's handbook exactly what that gets you. Deities and Demigods has solid rules that cover stats beyond 18. And we'll take a look at that real quick. Let's scroll down through here. This little intro from Gary. Now, this is under standard divine abilities and dungeon mastering divine beings, mortality and immortality, and divine ascension. So if you have a Deities and Demigods PDF or physical copy, And again, the expurgated version, you can buy a PDF of the expurgated version online. Oh, thank you for the reminder, Chris. Yes, Monster Manual has it too. My scan of or I shouldn't say scan of, it's the PDF that I bought back years ago when Bastion Press was doing the PDF scans for Wizards of the Coast, is really terrible. It's actually kind of hard to read unless I blow it up extremely bigly. So I just grabbed Deities and Demigods because it fit the tone of today's live stream better anyway, I thought. But yes, thank you so much for the reminder. So let's look then at these abilities. And these aren't just for deities. I find that they're just as important for characters who have preternaturally high character stats. Because there's nothing else in AD&D that really addresses them. So this is the go-to. But the one caveat I've got to mention, in the case of some of these stats where they exceed 18, but Jim notes in the book that deities get this effect with it, ignore that part of the explanation because your characters, your players, are not deities. In fact, he even notes that in the case of charisma can exceed 18 and go all the way up to 25. And in the case of charismas that high or as low as -7, deities gain either awe power, where literally walking into a room, there's a percentage chance everyone will just fall down and start worshiping them and obey them as if they'd cast some permanent high-level charm. Or in the case of horror, people will just run in fear. They'll kill themselves to get away from someone who has a charisma that negative. Those things do not apply to humans who, through some fashion of normal adventuring, gain that level of charisma or, fall down to that level of charisma. That's an example of don't give God powers, just look at the bonuses. But let's take a look at that. All of this is standard monstery kind of stuff. Explanatory notes, number appearing, armor class, move, etc., etc., etc. So we'll start out with strength. Now, strength is actually fairly ably covered in both the Dungeon Master's Guide and the whoops, that wasn't what I wanted. In the Dungeon Master's Guide under Gauntlets of Ogre Power, Girdle and Potions of Giant Strength, and in the Player's Handbook for like 18 double-aught strength. So let's take a quick gander here. Did I miss it? All right. So strength bonuses. You get a character who, again, let's say they're 18 double-aught already. They don Gauntlets of Ogre Power, or they get an Ioun Stone that increases their strength. They get a Manual of Gainful Exercise. Something raises their strength to 19. Well, right here, and this is on page 6 of Deities and Demigods, a strength of 19 is a bonus of +3 to hit, bonus of 7 to damage. They can carry an extra 4,500 coins weight. And now they're rolling a D8 to open doors. Ben bars lift gates as Hill Giant 50% of the time. And it goes on. Strength 20 is +3 +8. 5,000 coins. Open doors on a 7 and 8. Ben bars lift gates is 60%. 21. +4, +9, on down the line, and you can look at this on screen, and you can check out your PDF too, or your physical copy, all the way up to 25. +7 to hit, +14 to damage. When you have that strength, you dare not engage in a friendly tavern brawl, because even if you're striking to subdue, you will kill a commoner. Weight allowance, 15,000 coins. Open doors, 23 and 24, or a 9 and 10. If you happen to have a D24 handy, you can roll that. And you will always be able to bend bars and lift gates. There's wisdom, but we'll look at that. Intelligence. Now, this is pretty nice because from 19 onward, you gain immunities. So, if by some means you had a player who ever attained a strength of 25, they would be 100% immune to all forms of illusion or phantasm, because there's 7 levels of illusionist spells. At least I think there's 7. I could be wrong. It's 7. Anyway. No, I'm thinking of clerical spells. I'm sorry, I had the dumb. Because if we look over here, whoops, under spells. Oh yeah, nope, it's 7th level cap for illusionist. And then it just goes on. So thank you, Jim, for giving us that. Dexterity. Look at the bonus percentages for dexterity. I mean, a score of 19 means effectively you're never going to be surprised. And your thief abilities are just commensurately better. Constitution. Hit point +5, no one's rolled. And you gain +1 to your poison save. But a constitution of 20, +5, no one's rolled, poison save at +1, and you regenerate. It's slowly, 1 point an hour. But a character with a constitution of 19 will slowly begin to regenerate hit points. And then it goes on. And by the way, the no ones rolled, no ones or no twos, should be figured as twos. A constitution of 21 to 22 means ones and twos should be figured as threes, and 23 to 25, no ones, 2 or 3. So a roll of 1, 2, or 3 on hit dice. Let's say you've got a ranger with a constitution of 24. Oh, I rolled a 1. Well, we just treat that as 4. And then, of course, here's charisma, maximum henchman, loyalty base, awe power. And here's where Jim comes in and says regarding awe power. Note that awe power applies only to divine beings. Mortal-born persons who somehow acquire godlike charisma will not radiate this aura. And then we go over to -7, you know. We have the horror effect, which again does not apply to normal humans. And then we get into standard divine abilities, which we'll talk about in just a second. So right there in both Deities and Demigods and Monster Manual 2, we have what to do with characters whose abilities exceed 18 in certain rare cases, and it should be rare. It should be rare. But then the question might come, well, what if I have a character who wants to become a god? Well, godly ascension is the end of a player character. Just like death, just like destruction, just like failing their percentage chance on their system shock, or rather, resurrection survival check. That's it. No more character. I mean, you, the dungeon master, then take the character on as an NPC. But let's look here. Clerics and deities. Mortality and immortality. We'll talk about the planes of existence. That deserves an entire live stream all its own. And divine ascension. We're now over on page 11. And this is some handy-dandy information that Jim gives us about divine intervention. I'm sorry, divine ascension, rather. As study of the various mythologies show, it is remotely possible for mortals to ascend into the ranks of the divine. However, there are certain requirements that must be fulfilled before such a thing can happen. First, the character in question must have advanced to an experience level that is significantly above and beyond the average level of adventurer-type characters in the general campaign. This includes all such non-player types as military leaders, royal magic users, etc. So I wouldn't even consider this for a character less than 25th level. For example, if the average level of characters in a campaign, both by player and non-player, is around 5th, then a candidate for ascension would be something like 9th or 10th. If the average level is something like 15th, then a character would have to be in the realm of 25th to 30th level. I would still say that a divinely ascending character would need to be 25th through 30th level, even if the average is 5th. Second, his or her ability scores must have been raised through some mighty world-shaking magic to be on par with the lesser demigods. Should such an act be lightly considered, remember that a wish spell is the most powerful magic that mankind can control, and such an average increase in abilities would literally take the power of dozens of wishes. Each use of that spell weakens the caster and ages him by 3 years in the bargain, so they're not easy to come by. So keep that in mind too. The personage must have a body of sincere worshippers, people convinced of his or her divinity due to their witnessing and or belief in the mighty deeds and miracles which he or she has performed and continues to perform. That's absolutely 100% an unbreakable part of the bargain, guys. The player who wants to become a god has to have earthly worshippers that believe in their divinity. I'm not just talking about hirelings. I mean people who have been drawn from across your campaign world because they've heard of this miracle man or woman, regardless of what race they are, dwarf, elf, halfling, half-elf, half-orc, human, who believe them to be divine and have witnessed them do divine things. So look how narrow that Venn diagram overlap becomes. Yes, you can have a cleric who establishes a landhold. He's 19th level. He's established a church. People come to the church. But all of those people who love him, who love his sermons, and he's, cast raise dead and so on, know that, or believe, well, he's just a priest of such and so God. He's not a god himself. Something's got to move them over to believing that he is the god. And of course, like we said before, the person in question must be and have been a faithful and true follower of his or her alignment and patron deity. It is certain that any deviation will have been noted by the divine powers. Whoops. If all of the above conditions have been met, and the character has fulfilled a sufficient number of divine quests, that's another important point. If the player is determined that their character is going to go out like that, send them on divine quests. Then the character's deity may choose to invest the person with a certain amount of divine power and bring the character into the ranks of the god's celestial or infernal servants. This process of ascension usually involves a great glowing beam of light and celestial fanfare, or in the case of those transmigrating to the lower planes, a blotting of the sun, thunder and lightning, and the disappearance of the character in a great smoky explosion. Characters thus taken into the realms of the gods will serve their patron as minor functionaries and messengers. After several centuries of superior service and gradual advancement, exceptional servants may be awarded the status of demigod, which includes having an earthly priesthood and the ability to grant spells of up to 5th level to the demigods clerics. Now this is the unbreakable compact right here, guys. Ascension to divinity effectively removes the character from the general campaign, as the person will become a non-player member of the DM's pantheon. The section on dungeon mastering divine beings applies in general to the summoning of these characters, as well as their patron deity has more important jobs for his or her servant than to continually send them when called to interfere in worldly matters. And Errol, of course, has this great illustration representing the duality of falling into hell or ascending into heaven. It's got kind of a Led Zeppelin Apollo, Fall of Apollo look there to it. An organic cult of the saints is necessary, yes. Being noted as a saint is enough in my book. It takes somewhere near a lifetime. And it should. It absolutely should. I mean, if you're running such a Monty Hall campaign that the characters, by dint of spending a few seasons slaying orcs and trolls and the occasional rampaging dragon, automatically get granted godhood, well, it must be a very, very noisy place in the nether realms for the average angel indeed. Well, Ricky, I understand what you're saying about Jim's comment vis-a-vis, it removes them from the game, assuming that's what you were commenting about. But, a lot of people might, or a lot of Monty Hall players, particularly back in the day, might have been playing the long game saying, by gum, my character is going to become a demigod. I am planning on making them a demigod. And then they'll have all the demigod-like powers. And, they can just play DQD mode, D&D all the time. I can just walk through Tomb of Horrors without being hit. Hurt. I can blow through Isle of the Ape like it's a stroll through my overgrown backyard, etc., etc. Not so. Not so. They're gone. They're out of the game. They're the DM's plaything. But, again, if your characters attain stats that are very far outside the norm, and it's possible, again, there's a Librum or tome or manual to cover every stat. There are bracers, potions, Ioun stones, etc., that could potentially permanently elevate stats outside the norm. And to that end, we have deities and demigods to help us out. So I was going to dip a little bit into planes today, but I feel like, yeah, I don't want to try and resolve that in just like 10 minutes. Now, note, and again, when we talk about ascension or descending into certain planes, this isn't planar travel. This is basically getting invited into Club 33, if you're familiar with Disney urban lore. And there's a lot of talks about signs and portents here. Speaking of traveling, in Norse legend, men and women of power could travel to Asgard merely by touching a rainbow, part of the bridge Bifrost, and wishing to be there. So there are a lot of signs and portents and so on, and we can dive more deeply into the actual rules part of deities and demigods at a later time. But I just want you guys to understand from a DMing perspective the relative rarity of gods intervene, or how relatively rare having a god intervene in your campaign should be, and how incredibly rare a character ascending to godhood should be. Now, like I said on a recent live stream, I've never played Planescape. I've never looked at Planescape. I know that Planescape is a thing where you can walk around and bump into minor, major gods all the time. And that it is a, second edition AD&D thing, but that it's not. When I talk about D&D and AD&D, I talk about first edition Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, and I focus pretty much on its beginnings. So, if you back convert Planescape into your 1E campaign, and you're like, oh no, Bill, I have people walking around, they meet gods all the time and extraplanar beings and this, that, and the other. I can't help you there. All I can do is tell you what's in the Dungeon Master's Guide and put my own spin on it. And I agree with Jim and I agree with Gary and their writings when they talk about the rarity of divine powers in the game, the relative rarity. Thoughts about traveling to and speaking with gods on their home planes. I've had PCs speak to doormen aspects, but only once have ever used a full deity. I actually had that happen fairly recently. And I can't remember if I told you guys about this particular adventure or not, but a character to back it up a little bit, there is a Type 5 demon adventuring with the adventure party. She came out of a thought experiment where I said, what would happen if a demon got its alignment changed from chaotic evil to lawful good through a helm of opposite align? This is what happened. And it got gated in by name by a chaotic evil magic user. The characters subsequently found him in the midst of trying to make her obey his wishes. She had polymorphed herself into a human form. They didn't know what she was. They freed her from the warding circle, chased him off, etc., etc. Subsequently, a paladin in the party lost her paladin abilities. Went to see her priestess And she's a paladin of Ouijas, who is not lawful, neutral / evil goddess. But the paladin is lawful good. I'm not doing paladins and paladins of every alignment kind of nonsense. He's playing a lawful good paladin with a god who has lawful neutral aspects. Confessed what she had done, and the priestess was like, right, meet me on this hill outside Greyhawk when the moons have gone down 3 hours before dawn. We're going to have a talk. And told her, you have 3 choices. You can give up being a paladin. That doesn't mean you have to renounce your faith. It's just, you do nothing to atone. You can just leave, you can slay the demon. That's what it was. You can slay the demon, and that might gain you your paladin abilities back. Or you can take the silver path. And she handed her a chalice full of hemlock. And she basically said, drink this and find out. So she drank the potion, died, and wound up having a heart-to-heart with Ouijas, who scolded her for not consulting the priestesses of Ouijas first before deciding to let the demon live. So, and then got sent back from Acheron to live again. So, one character has met a deity thus far in my campaign. Now, if characters use like probability travel or astral spell or wishes or a well of many worlds or some other means to travel to a plane where a god or demigod is, and they didn't invite them, they might be on the plane. They're never going to meet them. Especially if they're tourists. If they come there with a specific quest and it is really, really relevant to the demon or god or whatever, then they may send basically a doorman out to discuss things with them. That's how I would do it. And Damien says, Ascension is a good epilogue for a campaign. My warlord and pathfinder, Robert DeLucio, earned a good enough reputation from his god, one of strength and freedom, that he got hired to be a demigod. Well, that's nice. And that's once in 15 years, Ricky talking about. Yeah, so that was kind of a combination of divine intervention and Ricky talking about, just going to see a god. But the character in question was more sent to see a god. So just keep that in mind when players come to you with this really cool idea for their characters getting divine powers. If that's the track they want to follow and you lay it out, you got to have followers who believe you're divine. You got to have exceptional stats, and you've got to be of an incredibly high level. If they hoe that row all the way, and they go on the divine quest, then at the end of it, let them ascend. Just don't let them keep running the character. That's yours. Now, I know that there was some kind of boxed set for basic D&D. I never read it. I never looked at it. Just never was never in my sphere of D&D play at all. So, just in case someone was getting ready to ask me a question about the Immortals box set, I don't know. But anyway, So any questions, any comments, any criticisms, any negative, nasty remarks about this sort of thing? Anything at all? And I'll be more than happy to answer them. Anybody over on Facebook? Nope, nobody over on Facebook. People don't watch much on Facebook anymore. I think it's because I'm over here. But that's okay. Of course, you know, if I miss your questions, you can always come over and ask on the Discord. Yes, we have a Discord. Oops. So any comments, criticisms, or negative and nasty remarks, if you have questions, you feel free to come over and ask. BECMI Mortals, badly implemented Marvel superheroes under D&D trade dress. I'll take your word for that, Chris. Again, I know it exists. Beyond that, I couldn't tell you. I love playing a cleric named Odin who, from level 1 on, likes to refer to himself as Odin, eventually becoming an aspect of Odin. Well, that's cool. That's cool. So tomorrow we're going to start taking a look at the planes. Sorry, I'm a little warm over here. It's making me kind of logy. Tomorrow we're going to take a look at the planes, planar travel, and that sort of thing. No, I think it's cool. I said as much. It's cool, man. We're going to take a look at planes and planar travel and all the different places you can go. Oh, the places you'll go in first edition AD&D. So thank you everyone for stopping by today. Wonderful to see you all. Had a lot of fun on the stream. Again, if you have any questions, jump onto the Discord and ask, or leave comments in the video below. I love getting comments in the videos. I really do. And according to Kyle, last night we were at 767. Hey, we've got 767 subs now. That's nice, man. That's really awesome. When we hit 1,000, mini convention. I've talked about it so much, I repeat the words in my sleep. But when we hit 1,000 subs, we're going to have a mini convention. A mini virtual convention. Don't show up at my house. And we're going to play all sorts of stuff. Original D&D, Advanced D&D, Tales from the Loop, Twilight 2000, Gamma World, maybe some Fight in the Skies. It'll be a blast. So you guys have yourself an absolutely fantastic day. I'm going to go do some errands that I need to take care of. And the goal isn't really divinity. He just thinks he's just so crazy. He thinks he's a god. I think all player characters come to that. So you guys have a swell day, and we'll see you tomorrow. We'll see you tomorrow, and we'll talk about plane travel without the TSA. Thanks for watching. I love you all. Peace, and I'll see you then.